Okay, so get ready for this. We're diving into a world you might not expect. We're talking about the link between stripping and some of the biggest names in music.
Yeah, it's kind of a hidden connection. Like, you wouldn't think those two worlds would collide, but you'd be surprised how many big artists got their start in the club scene.
Exactly. And when we say big names, we mean huge GE, like Lady Gaga, Cardi B, Azalea Banks. It's a pretty impressive list.
Seriously. And what's even crazier is that their time as strippers wasn't just some random phase. It actually influenced their music, their style, their whole career trajectory.
That's what I find so fascinating. It's like those experiences, even the ones that seem unconventional, actually became part of their art. So, in this deep dive, we're going to unpack how it all went down, how those experiences shaped their journeys and their music.
When most people think about stripper rap, they just think about the surface stuff, the beats that make you want to move, the suggestive lyrics.
Yeah, I can see that. It's easy to just focus on the obvious stuff.
Exactly, but it goes deeper than that. Like, think about the energy in a club. It's all about confidence, letting loose, and those themes are like woven into the DNA of stripper rap. But then you also have this whole layer of playing with societal perceptions of women and power dynamics.
Okay, so it's not just about being provocative, there's more to it.
Way more. You have lyrics that are obviously sexual, but they're also about control, about owning your sexuality and turning it into a source of power. It's a lot more complex than people give it credit for.
I'm starting to see that. It's like this blend of letting loose but also taking charge.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this whole subgenre so interesting. It's not just surface-level party music. It reflects a specific culture and the real experiences of the women who are part of it.
Okay, that makes total sense. Now, for our listeners who maybe aren't super familiar with stripper rap, what are some tracks that really capture that essence? I bet even if they haven't heard of the term stripper rap, they've probably heard some of these songs.
Oh, for sure. You've got anthems like Way Too Sexy by Drake, Future, and Young Thug, or Rihanna's Pour It Up.
Oh yeah, those are classics.
Right. Those songs are huge in clubs. And then you have the OG classics. Think I Love Dem Strippers by 2 Chainz or Back That Ass Up by Juvenile. They're so catchy, but they're also rooted in that stripper rap sound.
So even if you've never heard the term stripper rap, chances are you've danced to it, maybe without even realizing the cultural connection.
Exactly. It's like a secret code embedded in the music. And that's why exploring these artists' stories is so fascinating. It helps us understand all those layers, the influences, and how they come together to create something totally unique.
Okay, I'm hooked. Let's jump into some specific artists. First up, Lady Gaga. She's known for her theatrical performances, her bold style, and constantly pushing boundaries. How did her time as a stripper play a role in making her the icon she is today?
Well, for Lady Gaga, stripping wasn't just a job. It was more like a training ground for her artistic expression. She started out performing with a burlesque troupe called Lady Gaga and the Starlight Review in the Lower East Side club scene.
Oh, wow. So burlesque was a big part of her early days.
It totally was. That's where she really learned how to own the stage, how to capture an audience's attention. There's even a story about her stripping down to her underwear during a performance to get a totally uninterested crowd to notice her.
Huh. That's so Gaga, even back then. Going all out to make a statement.
Exactly. And that experience really shaped her whole approach to performance. Think about those iconic outfits. The fishnets, the super revealing looks, the whole theatrical vibe.
Right, like she always brings a sense of drama to everything.
It's like she took those burlesque roots with that playful subversion and visual spectacle and infused it into pop music.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. But it wasn't just about the visuals, right?
Nope. Lady Gaga was also taking cues from performance artists like Leigh Bowery, who was known for those crazy costumes and avant-garde performances.
Hmm.
You can see that influence in her commitment to creating a full-blown artistic experience. It's not just singing songs. It's about crafting a whole world on stage.
Wow, so stripping wasn't just a phase, it was like a foundational experience that shaped her whole creative DNA.
Exactly. And it's a perfect example of how those less conventional experiences can actually be catalysts for artistic growth. It's not always about following the traditional path.
Okay, now Lady Gaga's story was about finding that power and confidence on stage. But for Cardi B, stripping was more about achieving something different. It was a means to an end, right?
Yeah, totally.
Hmm.
While Gaga was honing her artistic vision, Cardi was focused on taking control of her life. She started stripping at 19 to gain financial independence, and it actually ended up helping her escape an abusive relationship.
That's incredible. Like she turned what could have been a really limiting situation into a way to empower herself.
It's a testament to her strength and resilience, for sure. And that raw honesty about her past, about using stripping as a means of survival, is a big part of what makes her so relatable. It challenges that whole typical narrative around female rappers, you know?
It's like people connect with her authenticity. She
Yeah.
doesn't shy away from her past.
Exactly. And it's interesting when you compare her to Lady Gaga, they both use stripping as a tool for empowerment, but in totally different ways. One was about artistic expression, the other about taking control of her circumstances. It just goes to show there are so many different paths to finding your voice and your strength.
I love that takeaway. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to empowerment. And it makes you appreciate how multifaceted their journeys were.
For sure. And what's even more interesting is how those experiences shape their musical styles. With Gaga, you see those theatrical influences in her music videos, her performances. It's all about creating these extravagant spectacles. And then you have Cardi B, whose lyrics are raw, unfiltered, and often directly about her experiences as a stripper.
It's like their music becomes a reflection of who they are, where they've been. It's not just entertainment, it's their story.
It's about understanding that their music comes from a real place. It's a product of their journeys, including the parts that might not fit that perfect pop star image.
Okay, so we've got Gaga finding her artistic voice through stripping and Cardi B using it as a way to take control of her life. But Azealia Banks' story takes a different turn, right? Her path to music seems less about control and more about escaping a situation that wasn't fulfilling her.
You're right on the money with that one.
Yeah.
Azalea's story is a fascinating example of how even the less glamorous experiences can lead you to exactly where you're meant to be. Initially, she was pursuing acting, but it just wasn't doing it for her. To pay the bills, she ended up working at a jazz club gift shop, A&D, dancing at a strip club in Queens.
Wow, so she was surrounded by music even then, even if she wasn't performing it herself. It's like those experiences were subtly shaping her path without her even realizing it.
Almost like those seeds were being planted, right? And what's amazing is that even though she's called that time a low point in her life, it was also a period of huge growth and self-discovery for her.
It's like those challenging times forced her to really figure out what she truly wanted.
Yep, and that determination to find a more fulfilling path led her to create 212, the song that launched her whole career.
It's incredible to think how those twists and turns, the things we might see as detours, can actually be the most direct route to our true calling.
It really makes you rethink the idea of a straight path to success, doesn't it? And Azalea's story is a powerful reminder that those unexpected turns can shape us into the artists we're meant to be.
It's amazing how they all had such different experiences, but still ended up on this path to music. Makes you wonder how many other artists out there have similar stories. Right?
Oh, tons. You wouldn't believe it. And their stories really highlight that stripping, even though it often gets a bad rap, has actually been a stepping stone for a lot of artists.
Yeah, it's like we tend to focus on the stigma, but there's a whole other side to the story.
Exactly. Take Amber Rose, for example. She's killing it now as a model and businesswoman, but she's super open about her past as a stripper. She's even said some of the best times of her life were while she was working in clubs.
I think it's so important to hear those perspectives. It challenges that whole assumption that it's always a negative experience. Like it
Yeah.
reminds us that everyone's story is unique.
100%. And then you have someone like Courtney Love, the iconic frontwoman of Hole. She's talked about stripping too, even mentioned that she made enough money doing it to support her band back in the day.
Wow, talk about hustling. She was literally fueling her music career through stripping.
Exactly. And it just goes to show you the unconventional ways artists have to support themselves and their dreams.
No, for sure. And speaking of defying expectations, we can't forget Trina, the diamond princess of hip hop. She was actually planning on going into real estate, but then a chance meeting with Trick Daddy at a music video shoot changed everything.
It's crazy how life works like that, right? Like one random encounter can totally redirect your past.
It really can. And even though Trina has said that stripping wasn't really her thing, she's still open about that chapter of her life. It shows a real sense of owning her narrative.
I think that's a common thread we see with a lot of these artists. They're not afraid to acknowledge their pasts, even the parts that don't fit that perfect success story.
It's so refreshing. It's like they're saying, this is part of my story and it doesn't take away from what I've achieved.
It's a powerful message about breaking down stigmas and owning your journey. And when you look at all of these artist stories, it's amazing how certain themes just start to pop up.
Oh, like what? What are some of the connections you see?
Well, a big one is financial independence. Stripping gave these women a way to take control of their lives, escape tough situations, and achieve a level of financial stability that they might not have had otherwise.
So it was about empowerment in a way, even though it's often seen as the opposite.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you can feel that drive, that hustle in everything they do. It translates into their music, their careers. Another common thread is this development of a strong stage presence.
Right, like they were basically learning how to command an audience way before they ever stepped on a concert stage.
Think about the confidence Cardi B brings to her performances, or Lady Gaga's ability to create those over-the-top spectacles. Those are skills they were honing while they were stripping.
It's wild how those seemingly unrelated experiences actually gave them the tools they needed to succeed in music.
And then there's that whole idea of breaking societal norms. Stripping is often super stigmatized, and these women are challenging those perceptions just by being open about their pasts and achieving mainstream success.
It's like they're proving that where you come from doesn't have to define you. You can have an unconventional background and still make it in the music industry.
It's a testament to resilience, determination, and owning your story. When you take all of that into account, it becomes pretty clear that stripping, even though it's often overlooked, has played a huge role in shaping the music industry.
It's like this hidden history, this whole other side to the music we love, makes you wonder if we'd view these artists differently if we didn't know about their pasts.
That's a really interesting question. Does knowing their backstories add another layer to their music? Does it change how we interpret it? Or maybe it makes us rethink our whole idea of what it means to be successful.
I think for me, it definitely makes me realize how much I don't know about the artists I listen to. Like, it makes me want to dig deeper and understand the full context of their music.
I think that's one of the amazing things about music, right? It
Mm.
can spark our curiosity, challenge our perspectives, and connect us to something bigger than ourselves.
So true. And I think it's also a reminder that the music industry isn't always glamorous. There are real people behind the music with real stories to tell.
Exactly. And sometimes those stories come from unexpected places, like the ones we've been talking about today.
It really makes you think, like there's so much depth to the music we listen to. We usually just hear the final product, but there's a whole backstory there, all these experiences that led to its creation.
Yeah, it's like an iceberg, right? The music is just the tip, but underneath there's this whole world of influences and inspirations that we don't always see.
And that's what makes this deep dive so cool. It's not just about listening to music, it's about understanding the artists and their journeys.
It's about those human stories behind the music and realizing that sometimes those stories come from some pretty unexpected places.
Exactly. And speaking of unexpected places, I think this deep dive brings up a really interesting question. We've talked about how these artists' pasts shape their music, but how does it change things for us as listeners?
That's a great question. Does knowing about their backgrounds make us appreciate their music more? Or does it challenge some of our preconceived notions about what it means to be a successful artist?
I think for me, it definitely makes me realize how much I don't know about the artists I listen to. It makes me want to dig deeper, explore their full stories, and understand the context of their music.
I think that's the beauty of music, right? It can
Mhm.
make us curious, it can challenge our perspectives and connect us to something bigger than ourselves.
So true. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from all of this?
I hope it encourages them to look beyond the surface. Don't just listen to the music, explore the artist's stories, the influences that shaped them, the journeys they took to get to where they are. You might be surprised by what you find.
It's like an invitation to engage with music on a whole new level, right? To understand the context and appreciate all those layers.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe you'll even inspire some people to embrace their own unconventional path and find their own voice.
Because sometimes those unexpected journeys lead to the most incredible destinations. And that's what we've seen with these artists. They've shown us that there's no one right way to make it in the music world. And sometimes the most powerful stories come from the most unexpected places. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.